My name is Len Shapiro, and I was a longtime sports writer, columnist, and editor at the Washington Post. Well, it started for me at a very early age. My father was a school teacher in New York City. Every day he came home from the Long Island Railroad and dumped 4 newspapers in the living room. And I was a sports fan and devoured the sports pages. I learned how to do mathematics, doing batting average and earned run averages, learned how to read. Was a big sports fan, had a great teacher in high school who saw something in something I wrote and said, "Hey, why don't you come out for the school paper?" I did, and I was hooked, and right from then I knew pretty much what I wanted to do. Journalism is becoming very specialized in a lot of ways. The growth of the internet has made it even more specialized, that there are specific science sites, economic sites, all kinds of different sites. But that being said, I think you still need to know the basics. You need to know how to write a story. You need to know how to write a headline, how to edit a story. You also these days need to know how to do it. You need to know how to do video. You need to know how to blog. You need to know how to tweet. All things I never had to do, thank goodness, during my career. Washington Post, for example, they're still very much long-form journalism, which are 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 word stories. Those are tough to read on the web. People just sort of lose interest or their eyes glaze over. So it's more quick-hitting. They need to grab you right away with a headline. It's called clickbait. They catch you with a headline and get you to read the story that way. And sometimes the story does not correspond to what you read in the headline. But it's a little different style of writing. That being said, there are still websites. For example, ESPN has a thing called The Undefeated, which talks about social issues, and they write a lot of longer stories. So yeah, there's still room for it. Well, my son works at the Washington Post now, and he thinks he gives newspapers another 10 or 15 years. I'm more optimistic. I think people are still, anybody over 50 is still reading newspapers, I think, I hope. For my son's sake, so he'll still remain employed. But in any case, I think that, number one, I think the brand is going to always be there. The big papers are always going to be branded. The Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times. I think there will always be room for that. The cost of putting out a newspaper, rises exponentially. What they have to do, though, they have still not totally figured out how to monetize the web. They still do not. There's some places have paywalls where you have to pay for it. Advertising is not always very effective, and they're still trying to figure it out. It used to be the sports pages were all game stories. Everything was a game story. You cover the game, you went home. Now there's so much more, and there's so much more to it. So I always felt that people wanted to read about other people. They wanted to know, what was Kirk Cousins, the Redskin quarterback, like? And those are the kind of stories I always love to do. Not the Redskins won 14-7 yesterday over the Lions. But I think there are opportunities for people who want to write and who want to be in journalism to continue doing journalism. I don't think journalism is ever going to stop. I always tell young people who came to the Post, and I was in charge of the intern program, what do you read? Where do you get your news? If you're getting it from the Associated Press or you're getting it from Yahoo, you're in the wrong business. If you're not reading the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, New Yorker, the Wall Street Journal, you're making a mistake. And if you're not reading great books of fiction, nonfiction, you have to read, and you have to be up on everything. Journalism's important. We're the watchdog, we're the first chapter of history, and I don't think that's ever going to change.